trends have you been seeing since the start of 2021 around buy-to-let investment and development, and why?
Interesting. I think one of the big trends that we've seen as trainers of property developers, and my experience being in this industry now nearly 40 years, is a huge amount of landlords, almost a disproportionate amount of landlords wanting to look for something else. Back in 2016, George Osborne started this whole process of taxing, with the cessation of tax-deductible mortgage interest, and then additional stamp duty, and then, of course, then further regulations. It's made it very difficult for landlords to really make a profit out of what they're doing. And, of course, it's just hard work. And what we have seen, I think, really the start of this year, and because 2020 accelerated this, was those landlords looking for something different, looking for another angle. And in any business, looking to diversify their business. They haven't got all their eggs in that one basket, which we all know that's a problem. And so we've seen a lot of landlords sort of looking over the fence at development going, what is that about? How could I get into development? Have I got the skill sets to do development? Not necessarily wanting to drop their portfolio. In fact, wanting to still build their portfolio, because I think a lot of them have found the bigger the portfolios, the easier it is to get profit out of them. Small portfolios, not so good. But traditionally, it takes a long time for a landlord to build a portfolio. So it's what I can do to diversify. How can that help me build my portfolio? And equally, the attraction that a lot of landlords are starting to see is how do I get lumps of cash? Because I think what a lot of people found in 2020, those with liquid cash in the bank sort of sat back, had a glass of wine, and were fairly chilled. Those that were running fairly tight portfolios in terms of the finances were struggling a little bit because there's some, rightly so, they couldn't often get tenants out. They had problems and cash flow was tight. So getting a facility or a business or a part of their business that bought lumps of cash, I think was attractive. So that probably is the trend that we've seen from the start of the year.
Okay, great. So obviously where we've got buy-to-let investors now moving into the development space, so to speak, and it might be their first kind of venture into that area, what should they be looking out for in order to continue to make a good return on their money over the next few years?
Okay, I think if we're looking at investors coming in to the development market and making a return on that money, because I think making a return on your buy-to-let portfolio as such, that's another question in terms of what sort of tenants and how you control and manage that. But I think if you look at their overall property business, and that's what I think a lot of landlords are doing, and perhaps in my opinion should do, is have a much more diverse portfolio of property. And then in terms of getting that good return, that's where development comes in, because you can go and do a development for the same price of a straightforward, what one might call a vanilla buy-to-let, maybe a 3-bed mid-terrace property in certain parts of the country. You can leverage your way into a commercial building, okay? Because you've got a lot more money you can bring into that from commercial lenders. In fact, you need, in some cases, a lot less than what you might do to do a buy-to-let. And you can come out the back end of that. You can either build that to rent it, so you can hold it. So that can build your portfolio quicker, which will potentially give you a better return on your money. Or you can take a mixture of lumps of cash out of it and hold some properties, or of course, just take all the cash. So in the return, I think, buy-to-lets is a long game. It's a long game. You build that portfolio. Most people have mortgages. They pay down those mortgages. And as the mortgages get paid down, their returns are getting better. Development, typically you're getting 20% return on gross development value. So you've only got to develop, say, 4 flats at around 150,000 each, 600,000 gross development value to sell. There's 120,000 profit, which you could do with the right experience in 12 to 18 months. You can't make that return out of a buy-to-let portfolio. So I think if you want a really good return, it is mixing the portfolio that you're building and do some development, take some lumps of cash and hold some properties.
Out of interest, how many inquiries have you seen, Property CEO, how much have you seen as a business over the last 12 months in terms of new investors?
A lot. Okay, so I can't quantify it for you today in terms of, I don't have those numbers to hand. We have a lot of inquiries, and I would definitely say as we started getting into 2020, lockdown started to bite, there was a huge amount of inquiries. One of the things that we actually set up was a thing called a support session, an online webinar. It's now transitioned into a program we call Open Door. It's a weekly webinar show that we run. But originally we set it up to help people because there was a lot of people in a lot of problems and they didn't know where to turn to. So we just put up a free service out there to help people. As I say, it's now called an Open Door webinar show, and we help that. But the inquiries massively increased. What we actually found, though, that following through, obviously there's a lot that wanted to go for it. Development has risk to it, but it's about being educated. Get yourself educated properly, understand it, and then you can control it. So what we have seen is we have seen quite an increase in people pursuing now a development career. I think what's happened over the back of last year, a lot of uncertainty. So whilst a lot of inquiries, I can definitely tell you without knowing the numbers off the top of my head, that 2021 has seen now a significant increase, certainly in our business, in those people that perhaps can now see the light at the end of the tunnel. And in the last month or two, this has grown significantly as well, where people are now making that commitment. We don't train thousands of people. You know, we're a relatively small player in the market. We're very hands-on, we're very bespoke. We only train development. But what we are finding is those numbers are increasing. And as I said earlier, a significant proportion of those appear to be landlords looking to do something with greater returns.
From your perspective, how are they accessing finance at the moment? Because I know the development space is a little bit tricky when it comes to inexperienced developers. What are you kind of seeing in terms of trends for securing finance?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of myth around securing finance in development, okay? Securing finance is not the problem, okay? It is how you approach trying to secure that finance. The problem that a lot of people have is the whole chicken and egg. You don't have any experience, you're told, in which case you can't get finance. Well, if you don't get finance, how can you get experience? Well, there is a way around it. Those that know, go out and do it. And that's what we train people to do. And it's all about credibility. You have to go out with credibility. Now people go, well, you can't get credibility because I can't get the finance. Yes, you can. Okay, there is a way that you build credibility around the brand and the image that you portray and the skill sets you bring. To be a developer, you need management skills, organizational skills, you need decision-making skills, and you need people skills. Okay, those 4 skill sets make you the CEO. Property CEO, hence the name of our company. We train people to be CEOs. And think of a cabinet minister. Think of it this way, and I think most people will understand this. The minister in charge of health, okay, perhaps gets transferred by the government to the prime minister says, I want you to go over to defence. Do you think that minister in charge of health knew much about hospitals, beds, and medicines? Do they know any more about guns, tanks, soldiers? No, they don't. But what they have is skills to run a ministerial department. And it's those CEO skills effectively that they've transferred from one to the other. As a landlord coming into this, or anyone with those skill sets, you come in and those are the skill sets that you have to demonstrate. If you can get yourself packaged right, and there is a way you do that around your branding, that gives you credibility. You surround yourself with a team, you can go out and get all the finance you need. What I can tell you, and this is a mindset shift for a lot of people, is there is more money out there than there is deals. So the person with the deal has the opportunity. So if you can actually know how to find the deal, so get educated on that, get educated on building credibility around you, you will get the money. So it's a bit of a myth that you can't get the money until you've got the experience.
Thanks for clearing that up. What opportunities and challenges do you foresee in the buy-to-let market this year from a development perspective?
Okay, well, I guess in terms of opportunities, they are significant. So we'll come to them in a minute because we're going to end on a high rather than the challenges on this particular question. So the challenges, I guess, and I'm not a buy-to-let expert, but in terms of securing good stock in the buy-to-let market is obviously always going to be a challenge. Those challenges can be overcome. And we talked about all the taxation and how you package up your buy-to-let and manage them. I think the buy-to-let business model is terrific, run properly. Okay, there's lots of issues, but you've just got to work those and build the right portfolio leveraged in the right way. In terms of the opportunities, if I could position the opportunities in the opportunity to build fast, much faster than you ever could, your portfolio using development as part of the strategy. Okay, going out developing, as I said earlier, you could develop in 12-18 months and quite simply return I say simply, it's hard work and there's risk, but you could return 150,000 profit. Well, that could leverage you 3 buy-to-lets in 18 months. How long would it take you to save 150,000 up to do that? The opportunity has come in literally in the last few weeks, and this is hot off the press. You might not have known this, and a lot of people listening to this won't know this. The government just has announced that on the 1st of August this year, there is a huge amount of buildings that can now be converted. On the 1st of August, there's various rules and regulations around it that you need to get educated and understand, into residential. So we can take, there are shops and offices that we can take, but light industrial buildings are back on the agenda. They were last year. We can take those and convert them. We can take old bank buildings. We can take gymnasiums, okay? We can take all sorts of buildings, health centers, medical centers, there's a whole range of buildings that you can now take under permitted development rights, okay? And that is a short circuit of the planning system. A lot of them have a process called prior notification, but then the local planning authority can only question you on so many things. The beauty of that is the planning system at the moment is under huge pressure. Some suggest it's broken. I'm not sure it's broken, but it's under huge pressure. So it's very slow and time consuming to get full planning. And you don't get development funding if you haven't got planning permission. Permitted development rights in place, and I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk, but almost for certain that you're going to get it with the right advice from the professionals, that the development funding will come alongside that. So as a new landlord coming into this environment, into this development space, okay, you have probably, it's the biggest opportunity I've seen in my lifetime, and probably I'm not going to see it again in my lifetime, okay? This is the biggest encouragement for anyone, but landlords particularly, to get in and be a small scale property developer, developing between 5 and 20 units, those sort of numbers, okay, where the bigger nationals don't want to play and above where the local builders want to pick up sites. Work in that small scale development space. That permitted development right change, which is coming in the 1st of August, has now opened the doors, and it makes 2021 a perfect storm, because if you add to that, layer this opportunities up, we have a huge amount of office stock, offices coming to the market because the world is changing how it works. So new old office spaces come to the market and need to be reconfigured or converted to residential. We have a huge amount of retail stock coming to the market, either reconfigured as what the new retail high street is going to be around, or converted into residential, and that mix in the high street. So add that abundance of stock, add those new permitted development rights. I talked about money just now. That is where the great opportunities exist in 2021 for landlords coming in and trying to be a small scale property developer.
I agree. I think the changes in PDR is going to completely revitalize the high street and obviously offer up a huge number of opportunities for developers. My final question is actually just kind of following that, based on the complexities with converting from like a commercial to a residential, especially if they are a new developer. You know, they were a landlord and they're moving into that space. It's slightly different than constructing a ground up build to rent, let's say. So what would you say in terms of how to prepare for any of those kind of complex challenges that they may come across? Do they need to be partnering with an expert team that has done this before?
That in a way is exactly it, okay? But it's not necessarily partnering, it's engaging, because you want control over what you're doing. I don't necessarily suggest you go out and partner or joint venture. You don't need to. The skill sets I referred to earlier, those management skills, those decision, organizational, and people skills, you have those in abundance, okay? You can then, because development, small scale development is a step up from sort of flips or a quick turnaround or a do or upper, where traditionally a lot of landlords will have experience of engaging with electricians and plasterers and plumbers and trying to pull all these trades together and deliver, okay? Well, I can tell you development is significantly easier than that, in the respect you're not managing those trades. You have enough money because you stepped up to a slightly bigger game, okay? And this is still small scale development. You can employ a professional project manager who will control, he or she will control all those disciplines for you. And the contractor, you're going to have a main contractor that will look after the individual trades. So you don't ever have to talk to an electrician or a plumber, and no disrespect to them, but it makes your life a lot easier because you have professionals running all of those people. So you have enough money to get an architect, a structural engineer, a cost consultant, a project manager, a full professional team that you can employ. You don't need to partner with. I mean, partnering in the sense that you're going to work with them, but they're engaged by you. You're the CEO. You control them as a CEO to go out and deliver what you want. So it's highly leveraged. A property development is probably, and I've been around in this industry for about 40 years and in lots of other industries, investing and non-exec. And I don't think there is anything more leveraged than property development, where you can genuinely, when you're up and running, and it's not get rich quick, but when you're up and running, you can, in probably a half a day a week, go and turn and manage a project that could yield you £150,000. So that means for a lot of landlords, they can still manage their portfolio or whatever else they want to do in between. It's a peaky and trophy. Some weeks you're quite full on, other weeks nothing to do, because you've got this professional team in to run and control it. So lots of ways, I'm sure a lot of people can imagine, yeah, that could be easier. It's much more business to business, dealing at a much more professional level than having to coordinate the daily process of maybe a quick refurb.